Hey guys, today I share a couple little tips that really help me and I know help other people who are neurodiverse, who are dyslexic, staying at home and still being productive. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, guys, and please share, please subscribe, please comment and leave a review about what you think of this podcast. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoy today's episode. So the big question is this: how can dyslexics like us create a place, a community, a tribe where people at any stage of life can come and solve any challenge, amplify their strengths, and ultimately help them become who they were meant to be, or in other words, conquer their dyslexia? That is the question, and this show is the answer. My name's Theo Goff, and welcome to the Conquering Dyslexia podcast. What's happening, guys? I hope we're doing good and alright. Today I want to talk to us about a couple tips that'd be really useful for us as dyslexics in quarantine or at our home or at our life when things seem so unstructured at the moment. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is I feel it would be so valuable for us as dyslexics for us as people really, to be able to learn some things and be able to apply some things to make us more productive. Because I know myself, and I know it's really, really common for us as dyslexics, structure is everything. In terms of if we're in a certain environment, do a certain thing, we can oftentimes really think and be focused at it. But once we have to do, for example, if you probably notice this yourself, when you're at a job or doing a schooling, you can do schooling really much more better in school. You can do your work much more better at work. But when you want to do your school work or your work at home, it finds it's a lot more challenging, isn't it? I find it a lot more challenging, isn't it? Because when you're at home, you've got so many different distractions. You're in a different state of mind. You're focused on different things. It'll be harder for you to, complete that piece of work, get that done, because maybe the TV's on. Maybe you hear things in the background because you have a phone and you have so many distractions on it. And I know with myself, it felt like torture, to be honest, because I remember I had a really good routine up. I would go to work, and then I'd go home, and on the weekends I'd go to Costa, or when I was not working, I'd go to Costa all the time, and I was working, have my work day at Costa, and come home, and I could still be a bit productive because I was always in that headspace. But without being able to go there, to go to what I call Costa, I was sitting there for 6-7 hours and just work, without having that little space to go to, I found it really, really hard to be productive, really, really hard to lay things out in a certain way. And it's really interesting because as dyslexics, we think very, very vividly. We know oftentimes our working memory isn't really that good. We can't keep a lot of stuff in our head at one time. And one of my friends described it really, really well. His name is Darius. He does a lot of things with mind mapping, and he says, this is how a dyslexic brain works, and it's a lot different than a non-dyslexic brain. And he gave two amazing examples. He gave that one thing is a dyslexic mind is a place imagine a shed without any gravity. You imagine all these little, spanners, all these tools floating around everywhere. He says that's a dyslexic brain. Because you would put something somewhere, and you go back, and you come back 10 minutes later, and that thing wouldn't be where you put it, and it would be somewhere else. It reminds me a lot of times, I can relate that a lot of myself. I'd put something somewhere, look back, and it's got... But anyway, that's our brain. But when a non-dyslexic brain, a neurotypical person, they would have a gravity in their shed. So they would put something somewhere in their shed, their tool, their spanner, or whatever, and it would stay in the same place. It wouldn't move. And the reason why it wouldn't move is because their brain thinks in a very logical and systematic way. And our brains aren't like this. But here's the problem: when people think in a logical, systematic way, they often very, very struggle with being creative, with thinking outside the box. because everything's often in order, everything's back where they left it. They don't create nearly as many connections as us. And that's why non-dyslexic people can use something called mind mapping, where they have an idea in the middle and they come off all these different branches about how you can get that idea or how you can get that thing is done. They use that to be more creative. A dyslexic person uses mind mapping to not be more creative, just to be able to understand what's going on inside their head, to be able to plan, to be able to focus, to be able to organise. And because that's how dyslexic brains work. So when we go in our shed and everything's floating up, we need a system and a format to pull everything down, all our tools, all our spinners down, and weigh them down so that they're there where we left them. And that's the magic of planning. That's the magic of organising. That's the magic of mind mapping. And so this is something that I've learned really recently, but to be honest, there's difference between learning the facts. You learn sort of the facts about dyslexia, and it's kind of interesting things make you understand it, but also there's coping strategies that we've used for years and years and years to help us get to where we were. Because, for example, I've been really obsessed with just trying planning and being organised, really with myself, not in terms of tidiness, this room is a mess, but in terms of me kind of being organised and knowing what I'm doing. For years ago, I'd sort of plan each thing. I used to schedule it on my phone every half an hour, and I would change things, and I used to get really stressed when my plan didn't go to plan, and I would change my plan, so it went to plan, and then that didn't go to plan, and I went through these years of really having this obsession with planning and organising and creating these systems in place, and then it became really, really streamlined. And so that's one way dyslexic's brain works that's different. Another way is what the same person, Darius, explains, is a dyslexic person is like a manual gearbox. I drive a manual. Go in gear 1, you go gear 2, gear 3, gear 4, gear 5. But a non-dyslexic, a neurotypical brain, gearbox is like an automatic. You don't have to go through gears. You just head to the accelerator and brake. But an actual manual uses accelerator, brake, and also clutch. Clutch is how you change all the gears. And so what we get learned as dyslexic, we get learned and taught about how to drive a manual car, how to go up the gears, how to work our brain. We get taught in a way that's manual, taught in a way that's automatic, not taught in a way that's manual. So what he basically said is that we have to go through a process of doing things. We have to go process, a ritual of doing things. For example, here's my process. I go to work, you mean school work is fine, come home, I get home, I make a tea, I make iced coffee and tea, and I do a 2-minute meditation thing, talk to my friend, do whatever, and then I start doing this podcast. After this podcast, I work on my other actions to do, but that's my routine. That's how I get my gears in order. Another, a neurotypical brain, I don't know because I'm not them, they may not have to go for the same ritual all the time. And I love having rituals because they make me focus, they make me understand the way things work. So this is some understandings that are really, really key. But I want to give you some tips that will be really helpful for a dyslexic person at home to do it. Now, the first thing I've alluded to, it is organisation. It is planning. It is knowing what you're doing, and how you can do this is 1, making sure things are clean. 2, creating a schedule. Now, how do you create a schedule? You don't just write on everything you need to go and say, okay, this is Thursday, I'm getting it all done Thursday, and write a massive list out. No, you don't. You prioritise. You prioritise and you categorise. For example, you've got a list of 50 things you want to do. You break them down, you categorise and say, okay, what's a part of my work? What's this a part of my work? There's different elements of your work, isn't it? It's not all bundled up into just work. It's okay, this is my admin, this is speaking to people, this is, for example, your teacher, getting all the work, this is planning all the work for people, this is, making the videos, delivering all the work, do all the work for people, this is marking everyone else's work, this is, calling out the parents and following up with people, and all of these sort of things, there's different sections of doing the work. So you have to categorise, and once you categorise, you can prioritise. Okay, this is all the actions I need to do for setting out work. What's the most important action I need to do now? And after you categorize and prioritize, you start to schedule, because you have all these different chunks, and you have to schedule, okay, what's most important? What do I have to do first, second, third, and fourth, and fifth? Okay? And now here's the thing with dyslexics. We have a bad estimate of time. I get told this, I've learned this, and everyone says, oh, you've got a bad estimate of time. We're thinking, do we really? But here's what I've learned, and through my experience and watching others, is that we think that we can do so much in such a small amount of time. We think that we can do 2 days of work in half an hour. We can't. And we often have to take time to realize this, and we get ourselves stressed. Thinking, it's been 2 hours and yet I've only done these things done. I need to do all this done. And here you've just got to be realistic. You've got to sort of like break it down, then to focus on one step after the other step after the other step, and don't try and plan to be perfect. But guys, the first tip is just planning, just organizing. The second tip I would say is make sure you have a starting ritual to your things. Okay, like this is something when we talk about habits, it's called habit stacking. For example, you have a habit like you have one good habit like brushing your teeth, and you want a habit stack on top of that. And let's say, okay, you brush your teeth. Okay, what can you do after you brush your teeth? Okay, you brush your teeth, and then you go and do 10 press ups. And then, okay, so every time you brush your teeth, you do 10 press ups. Every time you brush your teeth, you do 10 press ups. You don't miss out brushing your teeth, and therefore, because you don't miss out brushing your teeth, you do 10 push ups. So you have all these different habits randomly about, but hard to put them together. But if you string them together, one after the other one, for example, it'd be really hard for me to do this podcast if I didn't have my T's there, if I didn't do my starting rituals, like write out my plan and doing this, then it'll be really hard for me to do. Because this is like really good. When you've got a block of like work time or focus time we've got to do, we have to do, I would really recommend doing something that would start us off. What's the first, probably easy action or action that you enjoy or something that will get you a lot of energy? Because the reason why I do this, because it gets me a lot of energy. It makes me able to talk, it makes me able to think, it makes me able to feel creative. Therefore, I can move into my next actions, already feel accomplished and feel like I've got a lot of energy. Because so oftentimes if we like just go straight ahead in the most difficult, complex task, and then we're worried about all these other tasks we have to do, it gets us, a bit flustered as it were. So it's all this. Another thing what I'd do, especially if you're wanting to plan your work, you're doing a lot of revising, most best helpful tip I understand about revising, well, it's kind of two things. It's something called spaced repetition. This is where spaced repetitions means when spaced repetition in your learning style. So you learn something, you leave a gap, and then you learn that again. Or you learn something, you leave a gap, and you test yourself on what you learned, and then it reinforces in your head saying, did I learn this, did I not learn this? And the beauty, so there's two things. One, spaced repetition is basically where there's a gaps between your learning, but number two is the best way to learn is to test. Test yourself, not rereading the same thing over and over and over again, but having a list of questions and coming up with answers to that questions, like flip cards, like, okay, there's these, there's this thing I have to learn about chemistry or whatever, and I'm going to ask these 15 questions or these 20 questions about all these topics. I'm going to write down these questions, probably copy and paste them on a computer or whatever, and then every couple of hours I would look back at those questions and I have to recall that information. Because the way we learn isn't through just someone telling us something. The way we learn is by searching in our head and finding out the answers and then coming there out. Because the best teachers don't tell their kids the answers. They have their kids figure it out for themselves. Learning isn't when someone's telling you something. Learning is the process of you basically just making a distinction in yourself about what is the right answer. Saying, oh, I've got it. I know what it is. And how you get there matters. So, those tips are really, really helpful, especially for studying. Spaced repetition, blocks throughout the day with like a 3-4 hour gap, blocks throughout the week with a few day gap, even blocks throughout the month with like a week gap of, okay, test yourself, do a revision, test yourself, have a break, because the brain learns a lot when it's sleeping and stuff, and then try again. And this is, it's not my opinion, this is a really lot of studies, and this is the hard facts and science. Test and spaced repetition, really, really, really good for studying. One thing I really want to recommend is mindset. So, we probably talk a lot on here about mindset, but the mindset of really, number one, do not beat yourself up. Do not beat yourself up for not taking action. Do not beat yourself up to not sticking to your ritual. Don't beat yourself up for thinking you're doing the wrong thing, because this is something I learned the hard way. I used to properly beat myself up. Really tear myself down, and I just feel like this is awful. Beat myself into a really big hole because I haven't taken action, And then the only thing I've learned from that, what I learned is that when I beat myself up for not taking action, that I beat myself up, and then I feel bad about what I didn't do. And because I feel bad, that wouldn't make me take action. Therefore, I beat myself up more and more and more and more. And what I learned, the only time when I do truly take action is when I stop focusing on my failures in the past and I focus on what I need to do in the future. Let me repeat that. What I learned, what made me take action was stop focusing on my failures in the past. Start focusing on what I need to do in the future. And that started making me move forward on things. And it really, really helped me. Another thing, accountability. Accountability is so important. Accountability in terms of doing your rituals, in terms of saying, oh, have you done this? Have you done that? Not on everything, just on a few basic things, a few core fundamental habits, maybe working out. Like have a friend you want to talk to, have a little list that you want to go on. And now here's the really important thing with accountability. Accountability and beating yourself up are kind of are two deadly forces, because I used to be really accountable, but what I was really realizing, I was beating myself up a lot. So I'm being accountable, but not beating myself up to a point that it stops me taking action. So you have to be accountable to doing the things, taking action. It's really, really, really important to be accountable. And also I want to touch on one last thing, because by the way, guys, there's loads of gadgets out there to help you with your dyslexia difficulties. The main two things you need, you can get this on nearly all devices, is one, have something that can read the text back to you, and number two, have something that can say what you speak. You say a word in caterpillar and it would spell it out. So they'll say what you speak, and having those two information, you can get a lot of work done. So for example, last thing I want to say is that we talked about rituals, about having like a starting ritual to do the actions, like a starting habit to trigger off the other habits that are really important for you to do. Is that has to be starting ritual to the most important ritual there is. It's our day. Our day, the start to our day. And the first 30 minutes of our day is when we're most impressionable. It's when we're most willing to be influenced, because our brain is in a certain wave frequency or whatever. So what we listen to in the first 30 minutes dictates how the rest of our day is going to go. So plan out our morning ritual, not getting up stupidly early. Just plan out our first half an hour, 45 minutes of the day. Listen to something really, really good. Put ourselves physically in some demand. Do something spend time just for us. Doing what now? I get up, I go outside, do something called my hour power, think of things to be grateful for, bloody bar. And I get home, have a half hour workout, have a half an hour cold shower, make some food, and go off to work. That's my starting ritual. And that sets me up to the day, because I'm listening to positive stuff, I'm pushing in my body, and I feel healthy and feel energized. And once I do that, I know the rest of my day is going to go good, because I've done this. And I'll let you on a little secret. I didn't do it this morning. And I feel bad, and I felt off all day because I haven't done it this morning. But if I did do it this morning, then I feel so much more better. I've done it all this week onward up to today. So here are my tips. Those are my tips on how you can make most productive thing. And finally, I think what you need to do is applying. And what I mean by that is start small. Because I've been in the rat, I know staying at home is so hard, especially for someone dyslexic. I know for me it's so hard just staying at home. But what really, really helps, at the start, is just doing the one thing. Because so many people, oftentimes I see myself looking for help, looking for facts, looking for information, looking for guides, and they plan and they have best intent, and when it comes to time to execute, they don't execute. I think the reason why they don't execute is because they haven't planned hard enough, they haven't done all these things, they are not executing, and oftentimes they're striving for perfection and not really focusing on improvement. They want perfection, not improvement. Now here's my last message to you. Have improvement, not perfection. Because if you focus on perfection, you won't start taking action, because it's impossible for you to get there. No one can be perfect. But if you strive for just improvement, now how do you strive for improvement? Do one thing today that you didn't do yesterday. Do one thing better today that you didn't do as good yesterday. And do that every single day. And then when you feel ready, add some more thing. But say you're standard, okay, every day I will get up at 8 a.m. and do these things, no matter what. I will go for a 10-minute walk. I will do this every single day, no matter what. and you stick that to every single day, that will build confidence, that will build discipline, that will build so many different things to have you taking more action. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Take care and see you later.